I sat on the floor of my room and cried for you, not because of what we lost, but because of what I had hoped we could become. The quiet space around me echoed with the silent longing for something that could never be. The room was silent, except for the soft sound of my sobs, each tear falling for what could have been, for the moments we shared that I now wish I could hold on to forever. I didn't cry because I was angry or bitter. I cried because, in that moment, I realized that sometimes love isn't enough to keep two souls from drifting apart. Sitting on the floor of my room, tears falling like a broken dam, I realized how much of my heart I had given you, how much of me you took with you when you left. In the quiet solitude of my room, I cried for you, for the parts of me that will never be the same, for the pieces of my heart you unknowingly carried away. There are days when the weight of the world feels too much, and sitting alone on the floor, I cried for you, for us, and for the dreams that never got the chance to bloom. The floor beneath me felt cold, but the warmth of my tears was a bittersweet reminder of the love I once thought would last forever. I cried for all that we could never have. I sat on the floor of my room, tears streaming down my face, reflecting on the lost time, the silent words, and the love that once felt so certain, now nothing more than a fading memory. Every tear I shed for you was a reminder of the moments we shared and the ones we'll never have. It's painful to realize that sometimes the heart doesn't get what it wants, no matter how deeply it loves. Crying for you in the stillness of my room, I wondered if you ever thought of me in the same way, if you ever felt the silence between us growing wider with every passing day. I sat on the floor, surrounded by my thoughts, and for the first time allowed myself to grieve not just the loss of you, but the loss of everything we could have been. Each tear felt like an unspoken word, a confession I could never voice. I sat on the floor, crying, hoping somehow that my emotions could reach you, even if you could never understand them. I cried because in that moment I felt the weight of 1,000 unanswered questions. I cried because you were the one I needed, and yet I was left alone with my own thoughts and memories. Sitting on the floor of my room, I cried for the future we never got to share, for the dreams we had built together that now lay shattered, pieces scattered like dust in the air. In the silence of my room, I let the tears flow freely, as though they could wash away the confusion, the hurt, and the longing that had taken root in my heart. I sat on the floor, my heart aching with the realization that sometimes love is not enough to keep two people together. I cried because I gave everything, and yet it still wasn't enough. The room was dark, but my heart was darker still. I cried for you, for us, and for the love that could never be restored, no matter how hard I wished for it. Each tear was a reminder of the distance between us, of the things left unsaid, and the dreams that remained unspoken. I cried not just for what we lost, but for what we would never become. I sat on the floor of my room, the weight of my emotions overwhelming me. It wasn't just sadness I felt, but a deep sense of loss for the future we would never have together. Sometimes, the hardest thing to do is let go of someone who was once your everything. I cried because I didn't know how to untangle myself from the love I once thought would last forever. In the quiet of my room, I cried because I knew that moving on would be harder than I could imagine. I sat there, trying to gather the pieces of my heart, but they kept slipping through my fingers. I cried not because I missed you, but because I missed who I was when I was with you. The laughter, the hope, the future we had painted in bright colors. Now everything is dull. Sitting there on the floor, tears streaming down my face, I realized that sometimes it's okay to feel broken, to sit with the pain, and to let yourself cry for the things you can't change. I cried for the version of myself that had believed in fairy tales, in happy endings. I cried because in that moment, I knew I would never be the same again. There's a certain kind of sadness that comes when you realize someone you loved doesn't feel the same anymore. Sitting alone in my room, I cried for the pieces of my heart that would never be whole again. I cried not for the love we had, but for the love we never had the chance to explore. The what ifs, the might have beens, the dreams that never materialized. The tears fell for you, for us, and for the silent moments we never shared. I sat there, my heart heavy with the weight of all the things left unsaid between us.